It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things that really hasn't been talked about a lot in the mainstream media with the special counsel and the report on Joe Biden is the fact that the House Oversight Committee and James Comer very, very interested in the timelines of and the discovery of certain top secret documents that Joe Biden had that Hunter Biden would have had access to, and then looking at the timeline of when he acquired and had those top secret documents concerning Ukraine in areas where Hunter was, and then looking at when did the because this is the point that happened. Remember, there was the talk that Shokin, the prosecutor, was corrupt. Right. And everybody knew he was corrupt. Mm-hmm. And you go back, I'm reading Margot Cleveland in the Federalist.com going through the timeline saying, no, that wasn't always the case. No, the prosecutor doing a great job. And at the time when then Biden got involved and his son was involved, all of a sudden the suspicion, no, he's a dirty prosecutor. And so the belief is that's where the pay for play was.
Right.
That's where the change in U.S. government policy happened. Mm-hmm. And it was because the Biden family enriched themselves. Is the road they're going down?
Right.
Is the investigative road that they're going down? Margot Cleveland writes in the Federalist, among the material recovered from President Biden's unauthorized storage locales were several top secret and otherwise classified or confidential documents discussing Ukraine. One undated document discussed issues related to Russian aggression towards Ukraine. Another consisted of a memorandum for the president from staff members with the subject U.S. energy assistance to Ukraine, also dated September 17, 2014. An event memo from the vice presidential national security staffer titled Lunch with the Ukrainian President Poroshenko, which was scheduled for the following day. The overlap between Joe Biden's Ukraine-related work and Hunter Biden's Burisma profiteering became more pronounced in 2015, and then goes through everything that entire timeline. I'm not going to go through it because this is like it might take me an hour to explain all the minutia of it. Just trying to give you a overall umbrella of what the Republicans are looking at.
Right.
And it said during Biden's visit to Ukraine the following week, the vice president threatened to withhold a UN loan guarantee from the country. And yes, the Ukrainian president fired the prosecutor general. Shokin was later fired, and Biden bragged about it. Last week, the special counsel reported recovering documents classified as secret, dated December 12, 2014, setting forth the purpose and talking points with the Ukrainian prime minister. A transcript of the call between Biden and the prime minister was attached with a handwritten Post-it note showing the then VP had directed his executive assistant, get copies of the conversation for my records, please. The transcript labeled confidential and eyes only, do not copy, according to the special counsel, included pleasantries exchange between the two and the prime minister heaping praise upon Mr. Biden's December 9th, 2015 speech to the Ukrainian parliament. In that speech, he said it's not enough to set up a new anti-corruption bureau and establish a special prosecutor fighting corruption. The Office of General Prosecutor generally desperately needs reform. Biden continues to maintain that his demands to Ukraine to fire the prosecutor general, Viktor Shokin, represented U.S. policy, but that policy seem to have made a sharp turn just months earlier. For instance, according to the House Oversight Committee, in June of 2015, the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland, wrote the Prosecutor General applauding his office's progress on anti-corruption efforts. Then the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, would likewise publicly state in September of 2015, we want to work with Prosecutor General Shokin. So the prosecutor is leading the fight against corruption. That same month, the Interagency Policy Committee asserted that the Prosecutor General had made significant progress in combating corruption to warrant a third guarantee of a $1 billion loan. According to James Comer, as part of its impeachment inquiry, the House Oversight Committee has been seeking records to establish how American policy shifted from supporting Shokin to demanding his firing. And now that the special counsel investigation into Biden has ended, Comer is demanding unfettered access to these documents to determine if President Biden's retention of sensitive documents were used to help the Bidens influence peddling. As Comer stressed, in addition to the Ukraine-related documents, top secret and classified documents connected to China, another key source of Hunter Biden's millions, were recovered. And that's the one thing that wasn't discussed in there. His son's access to the top secret materials from things that his deals and things that his son were involved in, but especially looking, because remember the defense was, and it was so loud, that Shokin is corrupt. And when the Republicans and the House Oversight Committee hit back really hard on it, the Democrats, that seemed to be lost as a talking point. And I don't know why. I don't know what they knew that made them, because we see that the administration, for God's sakes, the administration is trying to convince you that Biden has the energy of a 25-year-old Albert Einstein, the energy and brain of a 25-year-old Albert Einstein. I mean, they're jumping the shark. Good God, if this was Fonzie jumping the shark, it would have been across the Pacific Ocean. Mm-hmm. But I find it interesting that there is no defense saying no, Shokin was corrupt. You don't hear that anymore from Democrats. You may, but you haven't really for the last 6 months.
Right.
You just haven't heard it.
Right.
And we always ask the question because we were always shocked at how quickly they went after to impeach Trump for something that wasn't a crime.
Well,
and something where obviously there was concern that there was corruption of the Bidens in Ukraine. Even in the Obama White House,
well, and
there were concerns about corruption of Biden.
Well, and that's the thing is that, and you look at the nature of how that impeachment went down, and it had been months and months and months of then Speaker Pelosi saying, no impeachment, no impeachment, no impeachment. The phone call happens, Trump and Zelensky. And then the phone call is populated with, in part, one of the CIA officers that was assigned to Biden as vice president in Ukraine, on Ukraine matters specifically, then ran to Adam Schiff's office. That CIA officer ran to Adam Schiff's office and said, hey, this is what went down. And then Adam Schiff's office took it and ran. All of a sudden, Speaker Pelosi's tune was changing. Oh, yeah, now we're going to look into an impeachment inquiry. And then it started to go into motion. And now, looking back on it, it was like, oh, Trump was getting close to the fire. And when you look at that, that had to be the case.
Well, I think when you look at it, this is one of the biggest stories, but the mainstream media, of course, is ignoring. But you can't stop it from progressing. The news is going to continue.
Yeah, you can't now. You can't now. It's everything is out.
But to know that that's what they're looking at, as one of the and for that, because that's the big one. Because not only would you sit there and say, okay, the change in U.S. policy on Shokin was because the Hunter Biden family became enriched because of it. Right. And that's what helped drive the policy. That's what they were pushing, and that's what they got.
Right.
And that opens up all the questions on the impeachment at that point, because at that point, you've got to reverse the impeachment.
Oh, if this all unravels, that, in the back of my mind, I've kind of had that question on a shelf, just waiting basically all right, hold on a second. If we walk through all of this and everything is fully demonstrated and clear, how do you not reverse that impeachment with this new information? Because right now, it looks totally different.
And here's what they're also looking at here, because this is, this could, if this was a TV show and Reacher was involved in it, I'd be watching it.
Mm-hmm.
The key here, however, is not whether Joe Biden retained the documents to further Hunter Biden's selling of access. You said that it's an important part, but that's not the key. But the key is whether he shared details he had learned from his position as vice president with Hunter. Given the thousands of emails Vice President Biden exchanged using pseudonyms, the fact that he had no problem sharing classified information with his ghostwriter, and that he has lied repeatedly about his involvement with Hunter Biden's business affairs, it is not a stretch to believe he shared confidential information with his son to advance Hunter's pay-to-play scheme. But the special counsel makes one more thing clear. Joe Biden will never face a jury, not because he's innocent, but because he lacks the mental competence. Attorney General Merrick Garland apparently concurred in that assessment as he approved Hur's report. So surely then Garland, as a member of the cabinet, is discussing with his fellow cabinet members the need to invoke the 25th Amendment, right?
Yeah, right.
She's being sarcastic
right.
there.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, certainly that's happening.
But that's fascinating, because we knew they were going that direction, and I think we'd asked a question off the air to each other. Okay, what happens now? What are they going to get? I mean, what can they get from the special counsel on all these records with Burisma, whatever? And all of a sudden, you're seeing that the House Oversight Committee the other day wanted it, and then more articles being written. Okay, what are they specifically looking into?
Well, and I said to you, we were actually heading out the door after one of the shows the other day. I said, I'm very interested to find out what was in those documents that he had. And the fact that we had talked about the very reality of the setting, and that is Hunter Biden coming and going, whether he's visiting or living there with his father, had access to these documents. They weren't secured. Some were in the garage. Remember, they were kind of spread out. Some were in the garage. Then you go to the UPenn office, and who knows who had access to that office.
The fact is, as we've stated, and we said, we had asked the question early on. Well, wait a minute, is what they accused Biden of worse than Trump? Since Trump was at least president, and you can talk about the negotiations going back and forth, even if Trump disagreed with the National Archives on it.
Right. These weren't documents.
Right.
Biden was never president.
Biden was never president, and he had these for years upon years. He should not have had them in the first place.
Right.
Outside of he should have never been able to take them anywhere in the first place to his residence. He wasn't president.
Right.
And so we know he did that over a period of a decade.
Well, I'm interested in going even further back in the timeline. What drove what? Was taking that, the information from these documents, kind of shaping what the future would be of, setting up his son in a position to be able to gain from helping somebody in a foreign entity or foreign business like Burisma? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking questions. What all? Well, just like with Mueller, if we said, look, if Mueller doesn't go all the way back to the very beginning on that whole Russian hoax thing, then it's not a full investigation. Well, in this case, with these documents, in the beginning of those, the very beginning of taking those documents, what was in those documents at the time, how much of that shaped the financial gains of the family deliberately by putting it all together and saying, here's where you could gain.
We'll continue on that point next. 866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Another upward mark for world wheat production, per USDA's February Global Outlook.
Production, we raised about 800,000 tons this month. From January, it's going to be the second largest crop on record.
And the highlights by country and producing region, according to World Agricultural Outlook Board Chair Mark Jekanowski.
We raised Argentina's production by 500,000 tons. EU, we dropped by 300,000 tons. We're also looking at some final production estimates from Kazakhstan and others.
Several export forecasts by country were also increased this month by USDA.
Including Ukraine, also raised our export forecast for Australia and Argentina.
Minimal changes occurred in the U.S. wheat balance sheet. Notable, though, was incorporation of USDA's flour milling product report.
That showed lower than expected wheat food use in the U.S. It was actually the lowest reported domestic flour milling since that series has been collected.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, I was just thinking here when we're talking about what the House Oversight Committee and James Comer. Did I say Comey before? I meant Comer if I said Comey. I don't know. I don't think I said Comey, but if I did, I meant Comer. James Comey has got nothing to do with any of this right now.
Right.
But when we were looking at, what the Oversight Committee is looking at, coming from this special counsel report on Biden, which is looking at the classified documents that he kept, and now they're looking at the timeline of, okay, what Ukrainian documents did he have, and exactly when did he have them at the House, and how does that coincide with the U.S. changing their policy on the special prosecutor Shokin in Ukraine, which is why they impeached Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, you couldn't write this, if you think about it. And the other thing that I find interesting is the White House is out now. This guy's got more vigor. He's got more energy. He runs circles around everyone. Now, we all know that he's lying, but on the whole Biden family enterprise, no. Joe had no idea what was going on. Mm-hmm. It was the illusion of influence that Hunter and the brothers ran and set up all of these LLCs and bank accounts to enrich the entire Biden family. So the entire Biden family is completely corrupt. But Joe, who is full of vigor and critical thinking and observes everything so clearly, had no idea that his entire family was ripping him off by using his name in the presidency.
And what was Jill Biden's involvement in all of it?
Yes.
She seems to be one of those saying he's fine. He's got plenty of energy.
Yeah. So they're
maybe the whole family, maybe we've got it all wrong. Maybe the whole family is propping him up so they can keep making money off of his name.
Right. It's not Weekend at Bernie's.
It's a two-term presidency at Bernie's.
It's political career at Joe's house.
Exactly.
Just amazing. But both can't be true, and that's what they're trying to convince you of.
Exactly.
about to trigger somebody right now. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. All right, now Trump and the Georgia case and Fanni Willis. This keeps taking a new turn every single day, does it not? I mean, it seems like every single day it takes a turn. We'll let John Roberts explain it and then go to Jonathan Turley to answer. Constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley was on Fox News yesterday on it. Here we go.
Immediately at issue, Jonathan, is when the relationship between Fanni Willis and Nathan Wade began. They insist that it didn't start until after Wade was hired in 2022, but Wade's former divorce lawyer, who's also a colleague at his law firm, his name is Terrence Bradley, claims that the relationship began way back in 2021 before Fanni Willis even became the Attorney General. That's a huge discrepancy.
It is, and this universe just gets stranger and stranger. Usually a former counsel, let alone a former partner, doesn't come forth with evidence suggesting that you have lied. But what makes this very serious is that these alleged false statements were put into an affidavit, and that affidavit was filed with other papers with the court. Keep in mind, Wade and Willis are prosecuting defendants in this case for making false statements and filing false papers or material with the court. So they are prosecuting people for exactly this type of allegation. Now, that's not the type of experience you're looking for in prosecutors. It's the type of thing that raises conflicts of interest. But if it is shown, and it's being suggested there are witnesses to this fact, that their relationship preceded the hiring of Nathan Wade, they're in serious difficulty. I mean, they are being accused of filing false statements with a court.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, as I told you earlier, and I have no idea where this is going to end up, but could imagine the charges are dropped against Trump and Fanni Willis goes to prison.
There's a real possibility of that now. And
because when you think about it, if it is, and we find out this testimony is, and they'll find out. I mean, they'll be able to figure that out. When they were with each other, or if he starts talking about it, there will be people that will remember them in particular places. But the fact is, if she filed and was lying about it, that she only started dating him after she hired him for this particular case, that particular, fraudulent statement given to the court was done. You can make the case to protect him still being on the case and that money coming in. So you've got the money angle, but then you have the other angle of she's prosecuting a former president of the United States on RICO charges that are completely and totally bogus. There should be no RICO charges in here whatsoever, because the Donald Trump campaign was not a criminal enterprise.
Right.
They're by no definition. So she's stretching the law, and in order to stretch the law to what the opposition, the Republicans, believe is just an exercise in election interference, she is lying on a court document to not only keep her own personal self-interest, which is her boyfriend and the money that was coming in from it, but also to keep the prosecution going of the political opposition on extremely suspicious charges. I'll call them what I believe they are, bogus charges against the president. You can't apply RICO here because there was no criminal enterprise.
Right.
And by any definition of the law, there is no, and you see what the Democrats are doing across the board, whether it's there or whether it's the state attorney generals totally defying the Constitution, trying to kick Trump off the state ballots. And you can sit there and look and you can say, okay, you can connect the dots here and say, okay, this seems to be a common factor going on with prosecutors in the Democratic Party for the 2024 election.
Mm-hmm.
But for her to lie for those number of reasons, would that get her jail time? I don't know. It would get her disbarred, I believe.
Yeah, I think any and all the above are possible,
Right.
but it's about what can be proven, what actually did happen, and then beyond that, what can be proven. But you look at the implosion of the case. Because at first when it came out from the divorce of her boyfriend, these documents and information that was coming out about all of this, there were some in the mainstream media that were saying, well, it doesn't really mean that the Trump case goes away, or it doesn't really compromise the Trump case necessarily. And I thought, yeah, well, wait for it, because we're early in this whole thing. And the fact that she didn't come out to the podium immediately and say, all of this is false, you knew something was going on. It took her days to respond. And when she did, she just said, it's racism. So now you're learning more and more and more and more. And this whole thing could be an implosion of the case against Trump, which was weak to begin with, but also the building of a case against Fanni Willis herself, if indeed she broke the law. And there has to be, there has to be willing prosecution out there. There also has to be willing authority in terms of investigating this whole thing. Because you've got to look at this actually with every single thing now that's out there that's in question. All of it has to be looked at. You can't not look at it.
No, that's a great point.
So it's not something where you could just say, even if she came out tomorrow and said, look, we're dropping the case against Trump, that would actually put more spotlight on herself. There's no way to win this. All of this has to be looked at. All of her behavior that's in question now has to be followed through with a real investigation. That won't go very far to find, you won't have to go very far to find the truth. You need to find out, again, what the timeline was. And the question is, did she file false documents? If she did, man, the irony here is thick.
No, it's thick. It's thick, and I would think that because of the level of what they are attempting to do, filing bogus charges, trying to do everything possible on election interference to get a prosecution. Doesn't matter if the case is overturned later on down the road.
It's the influencing of the election itself.
It's the influence on the election itself by bogus charges. I don't know anybody. I don't know any serious prosecutor out there, Democrat or Republican, that I've seen that says, oh, no, these RICO charges, that the campaign was a criminal enterprise.
Right.
Can't make that case.
No.
If you know anything about RICO was going after the mob.
Right.
And the mob, that's all they are, is a criminal enterprise. Mm-hmm. The only thing they do is get money illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept isn't a RICO charge, is if you're in that criminal enterprise, which is clear. There is no other reason for the mob exists except to break laws and get rich. That's why they exist. Well, then that's a criminal enterprise. And RICO made it clear that in order to tie people into the conspiracy, you had to prove it to be a criminal enterprise. There's no way you can prove that the Trump campaign was a criminal enterprise.
No, but it makes you wonder about the other side. Not that it's a criminal enterprise, but rhetorically, instead of Trump derangement syndrome, the Trump derangement syndicate.
But remember, Trump went after Hillary with a civil RICO charge that that the Democratic Party was a criminal enterprise for everything they did. We're taking that money and giving it to Perkins Coie, and then just everything that happened afterwards, whether the money that went to create the false dossier,
Fusion
GPS,
all of that.
Right, the Fusion GPS, the making up the story about Trump. What was it? The story on I got my blank here. The second part of as we called it, the enterprise. And the fact is that was thrown out of court quickly because they said there's no criminal enterprise. A political party just does not exist to commit crime. They may commit a crime, but that doesn't fit RICO. You can still go after them for the crime that they committed, but you can't go after them RICO-wise.
Right.
And we had gone back and forth with that, saying, well, there were two different criminal enterprises that were created inside of that party. The one to create the dossier and the other to create the story about the bank, Trump and the bank. Dealing with the Russian bank.
Right.
All complete falsehoods, all created by the Hillary campaign.
Right.
But I'm sure they just threw that one out. I'm sure one of the reasons they threw it out is saying, okay, you can say there are things wrong civilly in here, and you can go after those individuals, as was done in some cases. But the fact is, you can't use RICO, even the civil RICO law, because there's no criminal enterprise here. Not that there may not have been, it doesn't matter if there were criminal acts inside of the Hillary campaign. It's the fact that the Hillary campaign was not set up to be a criminal enterprise from day one, and that's in essence what a criminal enterprise is.
Right.
Or unless something that was originally founded to be lawful and then becomes completely illegal across the board, that their only goal is to make money through criminal activity, and you can't make that definition stick for a political party, even if crimes were committed.
Right. Regardless of your disdain for that party.
Yes.
Or campaign.
Yeah.
Organization.
And so that's why, you look at this here, and I you've got the other case with looking at the immunity. I just don't know why you can't question early on whether this should even be in court with the RICO, not maybe some of the other individual charges, but the RICO violation, the conspiracy violation of it. I don't see how that sticks. I don't see how you even get to court with that, knowing how well defined the RICO laws actually are and how they have been used in precedent.
Right.
And what they were intended to do.
Right.
I just don't see it. Because if you ever did get a conviction from a friendly jury to convict Trump on RICO charges, I don't see how the Supreme Court doesn't eventually overturn that. Right. But that's not the point. They don't care. Just get the indictment. Just get the conviction, and you have a better chance of winning. The Democrats have a better chance of winning the election. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be interesting if Fanni Willis was the only one that went to jail here.
Wow.
But
this won't go away because now it's all on the surface. You have to look at all of it.
No, it's in the courts now.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. I guess the House Oversight Committee today interviews Tony Bobulinski.
All right.
So it's Tuesday, right? Yeah. Okay.
It is Tuesday.
Yeah,
it is Tuesday.
Hey, anybody who works overnight like we do, we know.
What day is it?
We all know we forget what day it is.
What day is it?
Yeah. But, yeah, he's supposed to testify today.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading Miranda Devine saying he probably most likely will be the best witness against Joe Biden.
I think as far as we know right now, probably the most central key player in that whole equation that we know of so far. So, yeah.
He definitely, last time we really saw him was in October of 2020. Did he do another interview on Fox? Maybe. Yeah, he did last year. He did something,
yeah.
A short interview with them.
But I like actually the approach of, and I don't know if it was his deliberate approach or not, but basically, look, be the witness and write the book one day, fine, but be a witness, be a factual witness, and bring as much as you can to the situation at hand. And then from there, whatever you want to do is fine. I don't mind him talking, but the more that he talks, the more that the left is going to want to go after him. It will be interesting to see what he has to say.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.